on this episode of the Modern Matriarch podcast. When we restrict ourselves and put ourselves in those diets, very often, especially today, along with those diets goes a huge category of deep nutrition that we need for fertility so badly, but we cut it out because it's the latest new thing and it's thought it's going to make us healthier, but the underlying message, you're going to lose weight. That is the biggest marketing thing behind all of it. You're going to lose weight. You'll finally achieve your dream body that will last you a whole 2 months, and then you're going to gain all the weight back, right? We all know that's the truth. I'm Victoria, and you are listening to the Modern Matriarch podcast, a show about living unapologetically as a woman. Here we discuss the quiet things out loud without fear or political correctness. You deserve to feel alive deep in your soul through living authentically and finding deep fulfillment as a woman. This episode is especially close to my heart because it's inspired by my husband and my fertility journey and everything we went through in the process. And I'm so honored and excited to bring this episode to you as a new mama with our beautiful and healthy baby girl. So welcome to the second episode on fertility. If you've not listened to the first one yet, be sure you go back and listen to the episode called You Are Not Infertile, because that is the opener and the broader approach to this entire subject. And it's really important that you go listen to that first one if you haven't done so yet, and then come back and listen to this episode after. If you've heard that one already, welcome. I'm excited to dive into this episode with you. This is a special topic, and I too was affected by the many things that we're going to be talking about on this subject today. And I'm excited to share these things with you because intuitively, a lot of those things felt like I had this nagging voice in my heart that what was going on. But it's hard when you're in the thick of it to stop and actually say, okay, if my intuition is telling me something, I should probably listen. So I'm going to open up with you the things that I did, the thoughts, the questioning, and different topics that will allow you to analyze your own life and decide how you want to approach this moving forward. On today's podcast, we're going to dissect and talk about how we women, especially women, are essentially making ourselves infertile when it comes to the subject of weight. The whole concept of weight, our appearance, how we look, how we perceive ourselves really affects us in our culture today for so many reasons. And very often that becomes a priority over our own health and well-being. And there's a lot of other subject that surrounds the topic of weight that also affects us, and we don't realize how by the things we are doing that we think is good for us actually causes us to have problems with fertility. So in the first podcast where I discussed the overarching subject of fertility and kind of the opener on the subject when it comes to the podcast of the Modern Matriarch, I discussed a little bit about how fertility is a luxury to the human body. So when the body is in a good and an abundant state, that's when fertility can happen. But if the body is stressed, or we have lack of abundance, we have less, we don't have that overflow, then the body doesn't allow us very often the luxury of fertility, or at least healthy and successful fertility and healthy and successful pregnancies. This is why it's so important to discuss this, because in order for us to conceive and carry a healthy pregnancy, our bodies need to be in a state of abundance. And weight loss and restriction is the opposite of abundance, right? So you see where I'm going with this a little bit. And this is very logical. This doesn't require some kind of a degree. If you think about this logically, When you have a human being that is deprived of nutrition, deprived of a healthy, normal weight, and especially us women, we need to be in that abundant state for the body to say, okay, you can not only support yourself well, but you have the luxury to carry and bring about another life and grow a whole other new human being inside of you. That's a lot. The body needs to be in an abundant state, not in a weight loss state. Of course, we're not talking about obesity here. We're not talking about eat junk food out of control. So I want to get that out of the way. This podcast is not about that. It's about a healthy, abundant state. And yes, that can mean that it's more and different than what you're currently doing with your life. When it comes to the body being in a healthy and an abundant state, this means that there's extra, right? There's extra vitamins, extra nutrition, and extra fat. Yes, fat is so important in fertility, so important for the baby, so important for the brain of your baby. So you need that abundance, the extra, not just for yourself, but for your baby to be able to develop, to grow, to be healthy, and to be an incredible and healthy child once you bring your baby earthside. As we go through these subjects, I want you to know that I fell for many of those things myself. So I'm not here judging you or saying, oh, you should know better. No, this is my own discovery. These are just logical things I thought about later. And I paid the price for those. I mean, I don't really know exactly what happened. It's difficult to pinpoint why you have a miscarriage, why you go through trying to conceive for a long time. But we know that we can do so many things to put ourselves in a healthy state, mind, body, and soul, so we can actually conceive. And I hope that this episode inspires you to look at your own life and listen to your intuition. Listen to yourself so you can know the changes to make, so you can continue beautifully in your journey to motherhood. Of course, we have to look at ourselves, but we should also have a discussion with our husbands, our men, our partners, to look at their nutrition too, to look at their well-being, and focus this entire subject on both of you. It's not just a woman, it takes two to tango. And yes, our men, the fathers of our babies, are equally responsible when it comes to their health and their well-being, because it takes both of us to bring about a healthy new life. But the beautiful thing as you women, as us, it's so nice that we are the nurturers. When we share these topics with our men and we discuss them and we do a deep dive analyzing what we're doing with our own lives, we have the power as nurturers to help our men, help our husbands apply those changes, because we are nurturers of the household. So once we learn something, I know once I learn something and I bring something to my husband and we discuss it, if it falls within my category, I love to cook. I love to be the one that provides the nurture in our household when it comes to nutrition. I made the changes. I applied those changes, and I knew that I'm responsible for that part of it. And I knew that I can directly impact my health, my husband's health, and therefore the health of our future babies. It's really beautiful and powerful. We just have to make sure that we go through our own analysis, discuss it with our partners, with our men, and then we can take the right steps that feels right according to our needs to continue this beautiful journey of conception and parenthood. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. We're going to talk about calories and the guilt associated with that. When it comes to counting calories, our culture is absolutely obsessed. Don't overeat, or make sure you reduce your calories so you lose weight. It's insane. It's a battle I feel so many of us are fighting, and it's not just women. For us women, it's more often, but it's even for men too. We put ourselves in a state of restriction. And again, like we talked about earlier, when we go into a state of restriction, the body feels the stress, the body feels the restriction, and therefore can stop our fertility along the way. Our eggs are weakened, sperm is weakened, we don't have what it needs to be able to conceive a miracle of life and carry a healthy pregnancy. And so many of us are eating way less than we should simply to support our daily life. So it's funny because when I had the analysis, I was like, okay, you know what? Let me actually do a quick analysis how much I'm eating. I was curious and I used an app. I think I used, Chronometer. Yes, because it gives you a lot of details to kind of check where I'm at. Like, what's my truth here? I was eating barely 1,000 calories a day, and that is insanity for a grown woman who wants to have a child. And it's crazy because often the calorie restriction doesn't actually translate to a leaner body. Well, yeah, in a way, obviously you eat less, so you're going to have less to support your body. But in the same time, you can also eat very little calories and actually be overweight. So the calories doesn't always translate directly to achieving those, societal goals of looking a certain way. But it actually ends up giving you headaches. There's blood sugar problems. There's so many things that are associated with not nourishing ourselves well. And I was mind blown that I'm eating approximately 1,000 calories a day and actually under eating my protein, but that's a whole other topic. So I had to kind of do a reality check, where my calories are. And it's funny because, you don't realize how you could eat maybe 900 calories of good food and then you just have a Starbucks latte and you don't realize you just took in a bunch of, 400 or 500 calories of absolute junk. So, looking at that picture and go, okay, what are my actual calories right now? What am I doing? So you can know to improve yourself. But calorie restriction is definitely going to usually put you in the nutrition restriction category also. So this is something that is so ingrained in our culture, the calorie restriction. It comes through crash diets and different things. And when we want to put our body in an abundant state, we have to stop the restriction. Just the thought alone, our minds are so powerful. Just the thought of alone, I'm going to restrict my calories. I'm going to put restriction. That thought alone translates to restriction, not abundance. And the body feels that energy of like wanting to lose. You want to lose. You want to be in the loss, right? Our minds are so powerful. When we restrict ourselves, it just kind of allows us to go in that direction. So that's something to really, really think about. This leads me into the culture that we have today that's void of deep and true nutrition. A lot of us are taught just to focus on calories and how many calories we're consuming and restricting that. But we're not focusing on deep and bioavailable nutrition. Bioavailable nutrition means that when you consume it, your body doesn't have to go through a whole lengthy process to convert it to bioavailable nutrition. But when you eat a diet and food, forget the word diet, when you eat food that is bioavailable, that your body can access quickly and consume it and send it across your cells, send it through your whole being, and it's easy for your body to do that, and there's an abundance of that, that's when you have a body that is healthy and an abundant state. And for example, let's talk about this. One of the most important nutrients is protein, right? Protein, and I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on this subject. You can go read Lily Nichols' book on nutrition for pregnancy. There's a lot of different materials out there that you can dive into deeply yourself. But eating a salad or eating a salad with a couple of beans, that is not deep nutrition. You actually need bioavailable protein, animal protein, because your body knows how to convert best that type of protein so your body can benefit the most from it. Of course, today with the culture of this diet, that diet, veganism, plant-based, yada, 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 we are taught to believe that animal protein is not good for us, and there's a whole other topic on that subject. But honestly, we are doing ourselves a disservice because when we eat beans, it comes with high carbs, it comes with anti-nutrients. There's so many things that our bodies are not agreeing with when it comes to quite a lot of foods that's popular today or touted as healthy. And your body will even give you the side effects. A lot of us, when we eat beans, we know what happens, right? So when we eat deep, nourishing foods first, and then we complement those foods that we actually need with some other foods that complements this diet, that's when we have deep nutrition. But we're not eating a deeply nourishing diet. The most important foods that we need is ancestral food, and that's going to be a whole other topic on this podcast. I'll also have additional resources for you available on our website, themodernmatriarch.co, that I'll leave links here in the show notes. I learned a lot of those hard lessons myself, but it's really incredible how the body works and how you hormonally adjust when you are eating species correct food, just like our ancestors did. Our ancestors focused primarily on animal protein, and everything else was complementary along the way. I knew when I did my own heart check and my own analysis and my own reading that I need to be at least at 100 plus grams of quality animal protein per day. I'm only 5 feet, and this is why I'm at that number. But I honestly, from that point forward, began striving at 120 plus grams of quality, high quality animal protein per day to shift my fertility status. When you eat a high animal protein diet, along with that comes amazing abundance of B vitamins that directly impacts our organs and directly impacts our hormones, which directly impacts fertility. It's so sad to see so many women, so many couples focused on like, oh my God, I need to take hormones, this hormone, that hormone therapy. We're focused on taking the synthetic parts of it when we can just eat real food and naturally change the game for us. The answers don't lie in the synthetic, because when you take synthetic hormones, you've not addressed your anemia, you've not addressed your B vitamin deficiencies, and our bodies need so much of that, an abundance of that, when we're in our years of fertility especially. So going directly to what builds healthy hormonal balance is the answer, instead of taking synthetic hormones that doesn't actually fix the root cause, and you become dependent on it and you think that you're broken when you're absolutely not. All you need is healthy and deep nutrition, bioavailable nutrition, and that will set you up for greater success. It really is that simple. If our ancestors needed all these drugs and synthetic hormones, do you think we would be here? No, not the millions and billions of us, right? So our ancestors did something right. They were eating real food, bioavailable deep nutrition, without even knowing that it's taking care of their organs, taking care of their blood. The anemia problem wasn't there. Their iron levels were in abundance. Their hormones, therefore, were working well, and they didn't need the synthetic hormones to depend on to hopefully become pregnant, but then maybe have a healthy pregnancy, right? Because we're not addressing the root cause. That is and should be our primary focus. We'll get right back to the show, but first I want to share with you something that has been a game changer in my life: ancestral supplements. I've relied on these amazing, real and whole food supplements throughout my fertility journey, through pregnancy, recovering in postpartum, and now breastfeeding my baby. When all the many common supplements failed me, real, whole food, powerful supplements changed everything for the better. These supplements are pure and wholesome nutrition, real food that supports all of our seasons of life, just like it did for our ancestors. I've quit almost all other supplements with exception to a wholesome organic vitamin C in favor of ancestral powerful supplements. I believe in them with my whole heart, and I can't recommend them enough. You'll find links to my personal favorites in the show notes of this episode, and you can see which ones will support your current season of life. And now, back to the show. Next up, let's talk about our current culture of body image and perfect physiques. We have built, especially through social media, an absolute obsession with how we're supposed to look, both men and women, but especially as women. So many of us, myself included, become so self-conscious about how we should look and, have those perfect abs and not have any body fat on us. It is crazy because we actually need higher levels of body fat just to be able to have a normal cycle. The first sign of imbalance with our hormones that is very, very evident when our cycles are not happening or functioning properly, they're all over the place. And also when we can completely lose our cycle, that is scary signs of infertility. And often that happens when our body is in a low fat state. Social media is driving so much of that. So many women are self-conscious to show their bodies and to meet someone that they haven't met in real life because, they're going to see that I'm a little bit overweight. I've suffered from that myself too. I'm not going to lie. But if you look back historically, it's kind of crazy when we go to museums and we look at older paintings, you will see women are soft and curvy and round and they have their babies hanging out around them. Most of the time you see men that have more chiseled and cut physiques. That's in the past. The evidence is all there. But women don't look like that. I'm not talking about being, overweight and obese, but women look softer and rounder and more feminine. And there's a reason for that because that directly correlates to healthier fertility when we're not focused on having a single-digit body fat percentage, which is insane. There's also so many repercussions when we do that to ourselves. Besides fertility, lack of quality sleep, anxiety, there's so much on this topic that you can dive in deeper yourself. What happens when we put ourselves in that state? It could look glamorous on the outside because now you're sporting a six-pack on Instagram or TikTok. But in reality, our health and well-being definitely suffers. And on top of that, our fertility also declines. Usually when our bodies are focused on weight loss and we're constantly stressed out about it, we have a low body fat percentage, we constantly want to be leaner and more so-called perfect. Our bodies are flooded with cortisol, adrenaline, and if any of you know anything about fertility, you've done any research to date, you know that cortisol and adrenaline are the opposite of what you need for fertility. When you want to conceive, the best place to be is in a relaxed state when your body is not flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. That's an absolute requirement. I remember when I had my second miscarriage and I was having conversations with my mother who deeply supported me through the process. And she explained to me, she's like, hey, you are in a really stressed state right now. You are going through a lot in your personal life. You're dealing with a lot of different things. And that is not a place where you can conceive a healthy baby and carry a good pregnancy. You should really focus, even though it's hard, on seeking out what is stressing you out, what's bringing the high levels of cortisol and adrenaline. Work on eliminating that or find ways to navigate the stress better. It's so, so important. I cannot emphasize that enough. So I had to find different ways to navigate my stress. I also put off our fertility journey after the miscarriage so I can heal. And so my body is not just focused to being in this state of fear and anxiety and feeling inadequate. That was one of the things that I did after my last miscarriage that I had before we conceived our healthy baby girl. So the reason why I'm mentioning the stress when it comes to our body image, because often they are connected. When we are focused on weight loss and having that perfect body image, we restrict our calories. We are staying away from fats. We eat a so-called clean but very restrictive diet. We're focusing on dieting, on crash dieting. With that, you can't have a healthy state of mind. You cannot be in a relaxed state of mind. And this is why I call this podcast, Maybe You Need to Gain a Few. Because when you relax into yourself and you just stop worrying on the restriction, stop stressing yourself out on how you look, focus on your inner health and deeply nourishing yourself within a mind, body, and soul, and you put your body in a state of abundance instead of restriction, you reduce the cortisol, reduce the adrenaline, focus on abundance instead of restriction, relax, allow your body to just be, focus on deep nutrition and deep health, and above all, abundance, and don't stress about your physique and your image that much. That helped me so much to make peace with my years of obsession on how I look, because it's not on the outside that counts the most. It's first on the inside that reflects the outside. On top of that, we're also dealing with a culture and a society that promotes intermittent fasting and all kinds of other restrictions along the way. Sure, it can have some interesting short-term effects. It can be possibly good for men. I don't know. I can't speak to it. But again, it goes back to putting our bodies in a state of stress and also the opposite of abundance. It affects our blood sugar, it affects the way we feel, it affects on the actual quality of nutrition that we get and how many calories we get in. It's almost impossible to live a life of extreme restriction in every way and open ourselves up to healthy fertility and a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby. Intermittent fasting, it can sound so attractive. Oh, you lose weight, because honestly, why do we do all these things mostly? Body image, because that's what we've been taught to care about the most, right? But if we do that, again, we put ourselves in a state of restriction. But if we stop and we let it go and we eat intuitively, allow ourselves to be hungry and eat deep nutrition and focus on nutrition and focus on healthy nourishing within, it naturally doesn't go along with intermittent fasting. It's something that can be so controversial. Many people may get upset about me saying that. But honestly, these are the things I deeply thought about because I understood that I have to really peel away those things that put me in a state of restriction. So think about it. Does this make sense to you? Does this resonate? Do you feel that you need to be in abundance and eat good nutrition, quality nutrition, instead of focusing on like, oh, I'm going to eat the least amount of times in a day, the least amount of food in a day? Of course, you're going to give yourself the least amount of health in that day. It goes along with that. You're focusing on shrinking everything, right? So really think about intermittent fasting and if this is something we should be doing as women. I personally intuitively feel that as women, especially through our childbearing years, it's not something that fits us. It doesn't go together. When we want to conceive, when we become pregnant, when we give birth, we breastfeed our babies. I mean, my little girl is 6 months and she literally grew to double the size since birth directly through my breast milk. How the heck would she grow well and have everything she needs if I restrict the way I eat? It simply doesn't go along with bringing new life. I really stepped away from that mindset of intermittent fasting, even though I fell for it a long time ago. It also doesn't help that we are a culture of fast food. I don't need anyone to prove that. The lines outside the fast food chains, those stores and cars, is just insane, and it's so unfortunate. And I think so many of us fall victim to that. Fast food, not only is it void of nutrition, it's also full of anti-nutrition. It does the opposite to the human body than what we need when it comes to good health and fertility. And with our culture of rushing around and focusing on the rat race and everything we are going through, it's hard not to fall victim for that. But again, if we want to focus on deep nourishment and abundance and fertility, we really have to step away from fast food, even though it can seem like, okay, I'll just have a salad, like a chicken salad or something. It's still fast food. It's not quality food. And very often it comes with food that we shouldn't even be eating. And it's not just the burgers and the fries. There's so many types of fast food. And we ourselves, when we sit down to a quick meal, maybe we throw something in the microwave, a freezer meal, whatever it is, they all fall into the same category. We're not focusing on slow and deep nutrition the way we should, because slow food, healthy food, intentionally cooked, intentionally prepared for what we need to deeply nourish ourselves, is going to put us in the abundant state. We can't just let be food fast anymore. It has to be very, very intentional. Again, fast food, another phenomenon that's only a modern problem. Our ancestors did not have that issue. Foods were often slow cooked. They're eaten with family in a really nice state of feeling good and happiness versus just rushing around, maybe sitting on your car, scarfing down a burger and continuing to the next thing. This really impacts our well-being overall. But the type of food that we eat when it comes to fast food, whether it's at home or on the go, definitely does so much harm to our fertility journey. And if we want to change that around, we have to start appreciating and looking at food completely different than our culture inspires us to do today. Now, don't get me started, our cultural obsession when it comes to body image over internal health. I think that is the elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. People are like, oh, well, I eat burgers and I can look like this. Yeah, especially if you're younger, you can maybe pull that off. But should we really be focused on the outside? Shouldn't we be focused on the inside more than the outside? Look is literally just a shell. And often, yes, we can diet and we can look a certain way and we can exercise a certain way, but that doesn't mean that our organs internally are healthy and that we're able to conceive and carry a healthy pregnancy that's not high risk, that doesn't cause problems down the road. The way we drink today, the alcohol, never mind the sugar overload, but just in general, the effect on our liver. Your liver is such an important organ when it comes to pregnancy. Pregnancy is so demanding on the liver. And when we drink alcohol, even though sometimes it doesn't affect the way we look on the outside, it deeply affects our pregnancy. The topic of preeclampsia is really big when it comes to pregnancy, but nobody wants to talk about a healthy liver. And I think we all know that drinking often impacts the health of our liver. So it's not just the outside. We really have to focus on what we fuel our bodies with and what we shouldn't put in our body, even if it doesn't affect the way we look on the outside, because that is so critical to deep health and good nutrition and ultimately healthy fertility. Honestly, when it comes to alcohol, I was never really attracted to the concept of drinking, but I still drank socially, and I liked the taste of certain things like wines and ciders, etc. when I got older. But it was very interesting after I had definitely after the second miscarriage, but I think it was even before my second miscarriage that I just intuitively felt like I'm done. I'm gonna stop drinking. I'm not going to put any alcohol in my body, definitely not through my years of fertility, and I'll see how I feel. I thought I was going to miss it. I really like the taste of cider and I enjoyed drinking socially with friends here and there, not very often, probably maybe 6 times a year. But the interesting thing is that once I stopped drinking altogether, because I really wanted to focus on healthy fertility, fast forward all these years later, I don't even miss it at all. Not at all. And now I'm breastfeeding Avani, my first baby, and it just feels so good knowing that whatever she gets from me through my breast milk is healthy. I just don't feel right with the whole pump and dump idea I heard from other parents or whatever else there is online, it just doesn't feel right, and I don't miss it whatsoever. I know, and we all know, that alcohol impacts our liver, and I don't even want to impact it a tiny bit. I am so past that. And especially now knowing that whatever I put in my body impacts my baby now and my future babies in the future, I just don't want that responsibility. It's not worth it, and it feels so much better not to be drinking at all. And honestly, at this point, I don't even know if I ever will. I really enjoy this clear life, this clear mind of not drinking alcohol, even though it doesn't affect my appearance as much, especially the amount I was drinking before. I know that it impacts internally, and that is huge. I never thought I would not really care to drink another cider again. It's really amazing. It's actually quite freeing. So another topic I really started thinking about is the various cultural diets out there and the way it's pushed, and how easy it is to allow ourselves to sway to the winds of these constant diet changes. Most of them are driven by appearance and staying skinny or being skinny, losing weight, having definition, looking good in a bikini, and they're not driven by deep nutrition or good health. A lot of them are in the recent years, and it's funny because every time you'll have like, oh, plant-based diet, keto diet, this diet, that diet, very often you'll see a quick follow-up by the industry. Suddenly they have these new packaged processed foods that you're allowed to eat and you can eat with your diet. Hey, you can get gluten-free cookies. You can get vegan ice cream, right? Like you can get all these things, or keto bread, right? It's insane what you see out there when it comes to diets, and it's always followed by new junk foods associated with those. That's how you know that they're not deep nutrition. They're just focused on making money, and it's appealing to the mass population because people want to keep a certain body image. It really is that simple. I used to fall for it too. I've been through my years of veganism and all different kinds of diets and tried to lose weight. But honestly, my body was just hungry for deep nutrition. There's so much on this subject. That's a whole other podcast. But in order for our body to feel healthy and balanced and relaxed, we need to stop going from diet to diet. That is not productive to being in a relaxed and healthy, deeply nourished state. And it's really easy once you step out of that, and once you don't fall for the diets every single year, something different, because you can lose a certain amount of weight or pounds along the way. And you go, okay, how can I feel deeply nourished today? What do I need to feel good, feel healthy, sleep well, be active, have energy? That's where our focus can go. And when you start really focusing on deep nutrition and you do the research on it, even just look back simply to what our ancestors ate. I love Weston Price. That entire model is so interesting to me because it follows our ancestrals' way of eating, which is so important. We think that we have some new ways and figured out new diets, how to be a certain way today. And it's kind of arrogant because our ancestors have been living for many, many years, eating well without all the supplements and everything that we have today. And they were thriving. If they didn't, we wouldn't all be here, right? So if we want to filter the noise on new crash diets, we have to stop that emotional reaction to, this is this new solution, it's essentially almost like a new diet pill of how to lose weight. Like, check ourselves. So does this sound real? Does this sound wholesome? Does this sound realistic long term? And that's how we can check ourselves if we really want to pursue this way of living, or if it's just another fad diet, right? Because when I think back, even not too long ago, to my grandmother, and she used to make these old traditional foods from Eastern and Western Europe. Things were slow cooked. There was plenty of animal fats in there, very heavy focus on meat. and food was just a deeply nourishing experience. It wasn't fast food, it wasn't microwavable, it wasn't any of that. That feels wholesome and good. It feels good to your psyche, it feels good to your mind. If anyone tells you just to live on salads and smoothies for the rest of your life and not having deeply nourishing foods, you automatically feel like, ooh, I would really miss such and such, right? Of course, you can have a smoothie sometimes and you can have a salad sometimes. That's not my point. It's more about what feels good, deeply nourishing to us as human beings, and our ancestors really had the answer, and we've just gone all over the place since. So it's a really interesting subject, but it's so easy to fall into those diets. And those diets do so much more harm than good, because when we restrict ourselves and put ourselves in those diets, we'll get right back to the show. But first, I want to share something close to my heart. Are you tired of feeling overwhelmed by a million supplements with no results? Or are you struggling with unexplained infertility? Or maybe you've been told that IVF or IUI is your only option, leaving you feeling lost and hopeless? If so, you're not alone. I provide personal one-on-one coaching for women ready to take their health into their own hands. Whether you're facing fertility challenges or simply want to feel your healthiest and your best, I am here for you. I'm not a doctor or dietitian, and I don't plan on going that route. Instead, I am passionate about helping women clean up their health and mindset while unlocking the secrets to true wellness through ancient nutrition and ancestral wisdom. I want to share all the knowledge and wisdom I've gathered over many years and the very special steps I took in the last 3 years to finally become a mama just before my 43rd birthday. Together, we'll navigate our modern world with confidence, even when the cards of fertility and true health seem stacked against us. I've been where you are, feeling isolated and overwhelmed. That's why I'm honored and excited to support you on this special journey. With me, you will feel seen and safe to be yourself. Whether you need to cry it out, seek guidance, or simply want to thrive in your health. If you're ready to take that step toward empowerment and healing, schedule a coaching session with me no matter where you live. Follow the link in the show notes to connect with me, and let's create a brighter and healthier future together. And now, back to the show. And those diets do so much more harm than good, because when we restrict ourselves and put ourselves in those diets, very often, especially today, along with those diets goes a huge category of deep nutrition that we need for fertility so badly, but we cut it out because it's the latest new thing and it's thought it's going to make us healthier, but the underlying message, you're going to lose weight. That is the biggest marketing thing behind all of it. You're going to lose weight. You'll finally achieve your dream body that will last you a whole 2 months, and then you're going to gain all the way back, right? We all know that's the truth. So if we instead focus on deep nourishment and we stop allowing ourselves to sway in the winds of these diets, we can really change our fertility journey along the way. Let's talk about cold plunging. I know this is not directly related to weight loss, but it's kind of going along with all the fads and all the diets out there. And I really wanted to bring this up because I don't have another place to mention this on a different podcast. This is not a really large subject, but I wanted to bring this up because as I was going through my fertility journey and I read this incredible book that I highly recommend, it's called Awakening Fertility. And it started talking about the ancient foods of traditional Chinese medicine, but it focused a lot on how our wombs, right? Essentially our first our first room for our babies, right? I call it the baby room. Our womb is the first home for our babies, how it needs to be warm, how it needs to be deeply nourished through warmth. And cold is not good for fertility, and it's not good for early pregnancy. And it's funny because I actually remember my mother telling me, she's like, make sure you wear socks on your feet. If your feet feel cold, make sure you wear socks in early pregnancy so you don't feel cold. And that just led me to think about the whole subject. When I was listening to this book, I was talking to my mother. Our ancestors knew and understood that a woman in our years of fertility, when we want to conceive, we need deep warmth, deep comfort, deep warm nutrition. Cold plunging puts our bodies in a state of stress, especially as us women. And for some reason, intuitively, whenever I saw cold plunging and I saw other women doing it and seeing the hype on social media and everyone is posting of themselves, cold plunging, I just felt it in my gut that even though, it kind of looked attractive, it just intuitively felt that it's not the right thing for me. I should not be doing that. Not because I'm afraid of cold. I'm actually a great swimmer. I've swam in a lot of different cold pools and water bodies over the years of my life. But it's just the knowing internally, intuitively, that as a woman, and my first baby room, the room for my little one, needs to be warm. I just knew it's not the right thing to do. Obviously, I can't confirm if it can hurt fertility or not, but I tend to step away, look back, look deep, look within, and listen to my intuition. And I just feel that cold plunging is something we should really think about if we want to or need to do it as women, especially during our special and sacred years of fertility. I want to bring back the subject of abundance versus restriction, because so many of us women, when we are in the years of not wanting to conceive, right? We put ourselves in closing that space. We mentally close our mind from conception. I don't want to get pregnant, right? And with that comes the diets, with that comes all the restrictions that we go through in our lives. And when we get to the stage of wanting to have a baby, our minds and our hearts, our bodies has been so well trained. They have been so well trained to not want to receive abundance. It's almost hardwired at that point into our minds and souls and our bodies that we don't want to conceive, that we actually have to do some overriding and tell ourselves we want to, we are open, we are available, we want to invite the abundance, we want to gain a few extra healthy pounds from deep nourishment. We don't want to focus on calorie restriction. Let's eat well, eat enough, eat till we feel deeply satisfied and deeply nourished. Say to our baby room, you're open, you're available. I want to have you. I'm inviting you because I'm deeply nourishing myself. That is such an important piece in this aspect of fertility. Our minds are so powerful. And when we tell ourselves restriction over and over again, we actually believe it and we live it and we invite more of it. So we're going to have to rewire ourselves and let go of the conversation and the thoughts of restriction and override it, literally override it with our actions, with our thoughts, and what we see in our future. Don't worry about how you're going to go back and snap back from pregnancy. Once you go through pregnancy, again, you're putting yourself in that state of mind that wants to lose again, right? If we want to carry a life and bring abundance and bring a child into this world, we have to focus on abundance ourselves and let go and train our minds to override the restriction that we've ingrained ourselves for so many years. If you've done 10 years of telling your mind all these restrictions, you'll have to know that you actually have to work on rebuilding that mindset. You can't just switch that off. You have to tell your mind and your body and your soul that you're not only letting go, but that you're inviting abundance. With a healthy body and a state of mind of abundance, you can actually invite yourself to welcome this beautiful little soul, this new life into your womb. And it's so powerful. It's such an incredible experience. And it's really worth it to let go of that restriction so you can experience the incredible abundance of pregnancy and motherhood. With this new abundance, your body and your mind and soul is going to be able to do the most incredible and powerful and intensely demanding process of your entire life, which is to grow another human. That is so powerful, so big, and we have to respect it in the way it deserves. When I began deeply looking at myself and what I was doing on this topic of my body image and what I've been doing for many years, and I started applying all those changes, I began eating a healthy breakfast when I woke up. I started healthy snacking when I needed it throughout the day. I wasn't worried about I should only eat this amount per day or that many meals. I really began listening to my intuition and to what my body's asking for at the time. Like wintertime, deeply nourishing warm foods, and summertime, a little bit cooling, but also knowing how deeply I need to nourish myself. I need quality food, bioavailable food. Everything began changing. Instead of desperately focusing on just trying to conceive and, tracking and testing and focusing on what's wrong with me, I began focusing on the abundance. I began focusing on health. And I also began understanding that this is so much bigger than me. This is not just about me becoming pregnant because I want to be pregnant and I want to be a mother. I started understanding that I have to open my heart to the abundance that is motherhood before I even conceive. I understood that the abundance of good nutrition and the abundance of being at a normal and healthy weight is going to support my baby, is going to support the next generation. It's supporting my husband because I'll be making him a father. It's so much bigger than just myself. It's so important to look at the bigger picture and to understand that motherhood is nurture. It's not just about our desperate and very important need to become a mother. Yes, that is so important, and every woman deserves that. But when we start looking at it deeply, of what we're actually doing with this, what is our responsibility? What is the beauty of becoming a mother and carrying a healthy pregnancy is that we carry this huge responsibility, not just for ourselves, but for so many generations to come. And we carry a huge responsibility to do our best for the next generations. We carry a responsibility for our husbands who are the father of our babies. We can do so much better, and we can focus on the bigger picture and the next generations because it's an absolute honor to be the vessel for the next generation in our species. When I began understanding that and deeply living it and focus on abundance and focus on my responsibility, what it means to nurture and to bring about new life, everything started changing. It's actually incredible that when I started applying all these topics that we talk about in this podcast when it comes to fertility, it took me very little to become pregnant with a healthy baby girl at 42 years old. Don't live in that fear. Don't live in the restriction. Because I believe that our mindsets are so powerful and the actions that we take because of what we think about, what we do, what we consume physically and spiritually really changes everything. With every change that I made and I stopped focusing on the worry and the restriction, I knew in my heart that things were changing. And it literally only took us a couple of months before we conceived our healthy baby girl that is thriving in our life today. This topic of gaining a few healthy pounds is obviously just a piece of the puzzle, and I can't wait to bring more on this topic to you and have resources available for you on our website, themodernmatriarch.co. But I wanted to step into this when it comes to weight because it's something that so many of us don't think about when it comes to fertility because we're focused on so many other things. And I wanted to open up that conversation so you can analyze yourself, where you're standing, and where you intuitively feel you want and need to adjust. The topic of gaining a few healthy pounds was something I really wanted to bring to you because so many of us don't think about this when it comes to our journey to conception and pregnancy. And my hope is that this conversation sparked some thoughts, some ideas, what you need to do and you want to do and intuitively feel would be right for you in your fertility journey. I'm so excited to continue this conversation. It's a really big topic. That's why I'm continuing to have various fertility episodes on this podcast. And I'm also working on some amazing and helpful resources and offerings on our website. It may already be out by the time you are listening to this episode, so be sure you go check that out. But I'm so passionate about the subject of fertility because I feel like it's such a almost mysterious and panicky subject that so many women and men couples are going through today. And bringing peace to the subject and clarity and open conversation so we can relax more into it and come from a place of abundance and feeling so much better going into pregnancy and into parenthood. I just feel deeply called for to continue talking about this, and I cannot wait to bring the next episode to you. I'm thinking likely the next episode to focus on ancestral nutrition and how it's deeply impacted mine and my husband's fertility journey, and I feel it's been an absolute game changer. Do you want to take this show on the go with you? Whether you're relaxing at home or you're on the go, you can take the Modern Matriarch podcast wherever you are. Find us on all major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else. Just search for Modern Matriarch and join us anytime and anywhere. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Modern Matriarch podcast. Since you made it all the way to the end, I'd love to invite you to visit themodernmatriarch.co. This is where we're creating helpful and inspiring resources to help you along this incredible journey. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe to this podcast and leave us a like and a comment below this episode. Your support helps us reach more incredible women, brings more amazing guests to the show, and also helps us deliver fresh and inspiring content to you. We'll see you next time on the Modern Matriarch podcast.